Hey, it's Michael, and to kick off this week's solo episode, I've got a question for you. When you think of the happiest moments in your life, were you alone or were you with others? Welcome to the follow-up question. I'm your host, Michael Ashford. Come with me on a journey as I explore what it means to find common ground at a time when it feels increasingly harder to do so. To listen more than we speak so that we can understand that our differences don't have to divide us. My aim with this show is to bring you perspectives and ways of looking at issues or topics that perhaps you haven't considered before. To teach you how to ask more, better questions so that we might become more reachable as people. I'm a former journalist who believes everyone has a story to tell, and it's only when we ask questions and listen that we reveal what connects us as humans. Our dreams, our desires, our experiences, our ideas, and what we stand for rather than what we are against. The hardest time in my life was after my wife and I welcomed our second child, our daughter, into the world. You see, our daughter had colic for at least the first year of her life. Although in some ways, the telltale signs of a colicky baby, extreme crying, inability to self-soothe, intense sensitivity to stimulation, lasted well beyond 2 years old. Trying to put her down for a nap or to sleep at night would sometimes stretch into a 3-hour tag team marathon for my wife and me, every single day. Our daughter was never quite comfortable, and there was little my wife and I could do to pacify or comfort her. So needless to say, our daughter wasn't the only one crying in our house. It was a frustrating and exhausting period of life, which I can't even begin to explain in any way that would give you the complete picture of what those days were like. However, what made things exponentially harder for me and for my wife was that at the same time that we were trying to figure out life with our 2-year-old son and his colicky baby sister, my wife and I both lost our community. To prepare for our daughter's arrival, my wife left her career as an advocate for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault to stay home with our children. I have always said that my wife has held the two most difficult jobs any human could possibly have: a survivor advocate and a mother. Less than 2 months after our daughter was born, I made the gut-wrenching decision to leave my job as the marketing director at the software company that I had been at for 5 years. This was the first company I worked at after I left my previous life as a newspaper reporter and editor, and I had worked my way up from a project manager into the director of marketing role. Yet once I got into that director position, over time, the higher level management of the company, including the CEO and founder, made life miserable, not just for me, but for the rest of the directors as well, and I knew I couldn't stay. I remember sitting in my boss's office, crying, telling him that I hated what my job had become. Honestly, the details of the entirety of that situation are inconsequential to the point that I'm making, so I'm going to spare you those. But back to the loss of our community. With my wife no longer making a salary and my work life kind of in shambles, I found a new job that forced us to sell our home and move away from the town we lived in. It wasn't just the move away from the physical community that we loved that was hard. It was the fact that we had to leave the first house my wife and I ever owned, the place to which we brought 2 babies home from the hospital and hosted get-togethers with our friends and family. My wife and I had fulfilling, albeit challenging, careers that were gone. We had to say goodbye to our church, which we had actually helped plant and where we served in leadership positions. My wife and I each had a circle of friends that were among the deepest, most meaningful relationships either of us had ever experienced, other than our own marriage, of course. My group was made up of Lane, an elementary school art teacher an unbelievably talented musician and member of the Christian band Cloverton. Ramin, an entrepreneurial-minded and sometimes emotionally charged recent college grad. He was still trying to figure out what he wanted to do with his life. And John, a down-to-earth dude originally from Tennessee who loved the Green Bay Packers, his dogs, and grilled meats, and who was studying to become a commercial airline pilot. Lane, Ramin, and John were my community within my community. We could have tough conversations just as easily as we could go eat wings, drink a couple beers, watch football, joke around. We prayed with and for each other, and we went canoeing down the Big Blue River and camped on a riverbank with some other friends. I could depend on those guys, as well as the pastor of our church, Josh, for anything. One time I remember I was traveling for work and our basement started to flood during a rainstorm. My wife was home with the kids, and Josh came over to help fix the issue and clean up. We had a community of people that cared as deeply about our well-being as they did their own. And even in the moments where we disagreed, we still took care of each other. I felt inexplicably alive and fulfilled and happy. And my wife had the same experience of community with a group of women that she adored. Moving away meant leaving behind everything we had built, the relationships, the causes, the life that we had invested so much of ourselves into, and our support system. We moved to a suburb of Kansas City, Missouri. New city, new house, new child to go along with an only slightly less new child, new job, new life, and no community. We were alone. It wasn't for a lack of trying. I mean, we really tried. But honestly, looking back, we weren't healthy enough to even articulate what kind of help we needed to those people who didn't already know what we were going through. My wife and I, we were zombies, putting on masks and shrouds to cover up the parts of us that were slowly eating away at who we once were. It was the hardest time in my life. I was not happy. To deal with the loss of my community and the pain that brought about, while at the same time trying to overcome the pressure to be a good father to my kids and a good husband to my postpartum depression-afflicted wife, I turned inward. I adopted a mentality of self-care, that the way to overcome this hurt and crying out for what once was would be to soothe myself just like we're so often told to do. I went to the gym religiously, getting up every morning and spending sometimes up to 2 hours exercising and lifting weights. I tried journaling, writing down my innermost thoughts each day, my struggles, my pains, my worries and fears. I needed an outlet for these things. I did what the world tells us to do when we're unhappy. You do you. Have a me day. Focus on you. Surely you've been there too. Feeling disconnected from happiness, feeling as though you've lost your sense of self and need to rediscover it. But I found the relief to be fleeting. Emptiness still remained. What was once lost was not recovered, no matter the amount of weight I lifted or the number of pages I scribbled on. And perhaps most importantly, no amount of telling myself I was okay changed the fact that I didn't feel like it. What if I told you this relentless pursuit of self-care we've been sold as the answer to our happiness was the thing most contributing to the loneliness, the detachment, and the distrust we are collectively experiencing? I recently came across an Instagram post from Emmanuel Acho, a former NFL football player, perhaps better known these days for his book and his YouTube series, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. He started the YouTube series in the summer of 2020 as the United States was reeling in the aftermath of the George Floyd murder. Emmanuel's recent Instagram post read, "No one can make a person happy. You can make a person smile, you can deliver a joke and make a person laugh, but whether a person is happy or not is utterly out of your control. Every person must wage a solitary and internal war for their own contentment." The comment section of this post was filled with "OMG preach" and "this is facts right here" types of platitudes. But I and several others had a different response. I'll ask you, what do you think of what Emmanuel posted? Because it brought up some questions for me. Yes, it is true that only we can choose to be happy in our circumstances, and that it is no one else's job to make us happy. But can it be that no one else can make us happy? If our happiness is truly a solitary and internal war, what, then, is the value of helping others? And, during the happiest moments of your life, were you alone or were you with others? I'll come back to these questions, but I encourage you to consider them as you and I continue on in this exploration of happiness. And not just happiness, but how we care for ourselves and those around us. I'm certainly not the first person to consider the idea of self-care versus community care. But you have to go searching for it. It's not openly discussed in the same ways self-care is. I don't have the hard numbers to recite to you about depression or anxiety or suicide rates or job dissatisfaction or mental health or whatever. But I also don't think I need hard numbers. You know it. You feel it. We're in a collective crisis. Never before have we felt so alone, so disconnected, so untrusting of the person next to us, so unhappy. Physically, yes, we're distant from each other. But ideologically, we're digging our trenches ever further away from each other. Politically, we're polarized to the point of believing the other side is pure evil. Emotionally, we're a hot mess. And yet we're constantly being told the struggle is your own to figure out. The answer is self-care. Take a spa day, go see a therapist, Netflix and binge. Don't care what anyone else thinks of you and your choices or beliefs or ideas. Start a side hustle and be your own boss. The goal has become to be as individually comfortable as possible through a variety of self-care tactics, and we're sold the idea that this will make us happy. I'm not saying self-care is bad or wrong in and of itself, but when self-care becomes the goal, we neglect the needs and the happiness of those around us. We turn our backs on the fact that we are hardwired for community, and that taking care of others, lifting others up from difficult situations, even when we disagree with the choices they may have made, that unlocks happiness, both for you and those for whom you care. When self-care becomes the goal, we have the problems we're facing today, where we're looking for answers to happiness in places that are incomplete and incapable of filling the gaps in our lives. We become distrustful or even downright antagonistic of anyone or anything that does not make us comfortable, believing that the world and those in it have nothing for us. They can't possibly make me happy. What do they know about what makes me happy? We look inward and focus on self-care and miss the root cause of our unhappiness, which is that we lack and yearn for community care. We begin to reject anything outside of ourselves that makes us uncomfortable, even when it is good for us. I want to give you an example of what I mean by rejecting uncomfortable things that are good for us. I'm a certified personal trainer, and one of the most common complaints I hear from my clients is that they suffer from back pain, a not uncommon occurrence in the modern, sedentary lives that so many of us lead these days. People try so many things to get relief: chiropractic work, stretching, new shoes, new desk chairs, lumbar back support belts, cupping, acupuncture, ibuprofen, heating pads. All of that stuff works temporarily. Sure, you feel good right after a chiro appointment or after you pop some ibuprofen, but the pain always comes back. And so round and round you go on the hamster wheel of pain management, while never treating the actual cause of the pain in the first place, which is often that you need to get stronger and build muscle in your lower body. But this scares people. It's uncomfortable. It's hard work. You have to do it even when you don't feel like it. Lift weights when I have back pain? Are you crazy? I recently had a client of mine with a major back pain problem. He went to a doctor who recommended surgery, which would not only be costly, but restrict his movement and mobility for the rest of his life. He came to me and asked me if there was anything I could do. Over several months, we broke it down and slowly worked on building up a base of strength in his lower body. It was slow, hard, uncomfortable work, but he did it. And today, he's pain-free in his lower back. He doesn't need surgery. And now I'm training him to run a Spartan race later this year. Too much focus on self-care is like pain management. You can waste a lot of time and money and ultimately quality of life, but never treat the root cause. Self-care truly only works to help make you happy if it helps you become more capable of outward action of care for someone else, your community, the people around you. Not just the people that you like, everyone. Self-care and community care is not either or. It's yes and. So if our happiness is truly a solitary and internal war, what then is the value of helping others? I ask again. Should we wait to help others until we feel happy? Should we only help those who look and think and act and believe like we do? Or does happiness come in doing the hard work of seeking out community, even when those that make up the community might challenge what we believe to be right and good and worthy? For me, ever since I went through those difficult early years with my daughter, when I lost my community, when I struggled with happiness, I've realized that to get all that back, I must pour into others, to build community, to cultivate happiness for myself outside of myself. I've gone to therapy. I've done solo hikes in the mountains. I've read books. I've gotten massages. I've done self-care. But it would all seem selfish had it not led to selfless action on my part. I don't have it all figured out. I'm not saying that I'm the model example. I'm trying to give you an idea of what I've learned along the way. And can it truly be that no one else can make us happy? That the work all must be our own? A switch we can flip on and off after we've done enough nature walks and quiet meditation sessions? No. I reject this isolationist notion. While it's true, only we can decide what makes us happy, there is little doubt that other people can most certainly make us happy, even if they make us uncomfortable. My daughter's smile makes me happy. Playing games with her and my son makes me happy. Making a meal for my wife and my children and seeing them enjoy it makes me happy. When my wife affirms the work that I am doing, that makes me happy. Helping someone avoid surgery and live pain-free makes me happy. When I call a friend to ask how they're doing, that makes me happy. When my boss corrects my performance, that makes me happy. When a random person who listens to this show messages me and tells me thank you for the work that I'm doing to help us find common ground, that makes me happy. When someone disagrees with me but wants to talk through it, that makes me happy. All of this is community care. And self-care truly takes flight when it leads to more care for others. The result of these actions leads to greater trust, greater awareness, and a greater desire to see others happy. It's connecting with people and discussing tough questions about life. It's helping others without any expectation of reciprocation or acknowledgement. It's sacrificing your time or resources to organizations or people and knowing someone benefits while you sacrifice. It's finding common ground when there seemingly was none to be found and choosing to align with those similarities rather than quibbling over what makes us different. I don't know about you, but the happiest moments of my life were when I was with others. There are more than a handful of people in my life whose presence makes me happy, and the greatest feelings of overwhelming happiness I've experienced happened when I was able to show up in my own unique way for someone else and knew that it made a difference to them in a positive way. No matter our views, no matter our stances, no matter our circumstances. And I'm going to bet it's the same for you. Happiness is not solitary. Happiness is not a war. Happiness is community. So what do you think? What do you think about all this self-care versus community care talk? And happiness? Am I right? Am I wrong? Where do you stand? I would love to hear from you. Please go on Twitter or go on Instagram and share this episode and then tag me. In both places, I'm at Michael D. Ashford. The links are in the show notes. I would love your feedback. I would love to hear what you think of this solo episode here on the show. At the very least, please share this episode with your network and help spread the good word about the importance of asking more questions like the ones that I asked in this episode. I'll be back next week with another incredible guest. And in the meantime, be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode here of The Follow-Up Question. If you ever want to get in touch with me, you can always email me. It's michael@thefollowupquestion.com, or you can go to michaelashford.com and reach out there. I'll catch you on the next episode of The Follow-Up Question. And until then, keep asking questions.